April Fools. Hello, huge movie fanatic Nate coming at you yet again to review a movie that I intended to actually review and upload. I wanted to actually review it and have the video uploaded on April 1st, but then it occurred to me, that's just kind of going along with the system and kind of what they set forth for us peons to do, and I'm like, you know what, I want to fight the system. So I'm like, I'm not going to upload my review of the 2008 movie by the name of April Fool's Day on April 1st. I'm going to upload it later on in April. Take that, system. So I'm going to fight the system while reviewing a horrible movie all at the same time. I'm coming at you to review the movie that released on video in 2008 by the name of April Fool's Day. Came out on pretty much Sony home video. It's touted as unrated. I just watched this for the first and probably last time just now today, and it was absolutely huge disappointment. I got it for $2, half price books, clearance rack, and absolutely pretty much just crap. Now obviously I've already reviewed years and years and years ago what I would regard as absolutely fantastic April Fool's Day from the mid-80s that was done with Deborah Foreman and all those people, the guy from Back to the Future, and I can't remember any of these people's names except for just saying that, but and Amy Steele, I can remember her name. So I actually, while the 1980s April Fool's Day might not be necessarily a fantastic movie or anything like that. I kind of grew up with it, and it does hold a special place in my heart. I really like the setting and the characters and the atmosphere and stuff like that. But if you want to see what I feel about the original April Fool's Day from the mid-80s, feel free to check out my review of that. I'm here now, of course, to review the April Fool's Day, straight to video, presumably April Fool's Day from 2008. Just watched it. I actually do like how it began. It begins in this really swanky, mansion, all these rich bastards in this, this mansion, swanky place, beautiful people, this just rich atmosphere and shit. And this movie obviously is shot digitally. It's that time far enough into the 21st century where they're starting to shoot these things digitally now. And it's basically the beginning of this movie. It's kind of like the first 20 minutes or 25 minutes take place at this. It's actually Scout Taylor Compton is in this movie, and she plays this young girl who's they're holding a banquet or whatever for her coming out party at the beginning of this movie. Like the first 20 or 25 minutes of this movie is basically like her coming out party and what's going on with that, and all the rich people that are just whatever meandering. I actually liked the first 20 minutes of it, just because the setting's kind of cool, the characters are kind of cool and funky and just goofy, and there's one guy who wants to be a politician who's kind of a funny character, and I like the first 20 minutes of it more or less. It basically revolves around this guy. There's this chick who's like half face here in the red dress. She's like one of the main stars, and she's got a brother who's that guy, and the only guy in the cover, this brother and sister, and this guy's got the hots for this blonde who ends up showing up at this get together at the beginning of the movie, and he takes her into the bedroom and to do I don't know what, maybe some Atari or whatever those young kids do in 2008. Actually, this movie takes place the first 20 minutes of this movie take place on April 1st, 2007. So that should be noted. But basically, it turns out that this blonde chick that he wanted to basically seduce brings into the bedroom. She wasn't gonna, the way she portrayed herself, she wasn't going to go for it, and it turns out she's like going for it, and we're like, why is she going for it? Turns out she's been like roofied or whatever, and I'll just spoil all this now. I'm not going to waste time with trying to be all whatever. I'm going to spoil this movie. If you don't want to be spoiled, if you don't want me to spoil the 2008 version of April Fool's Day, you better not watch anymore or not listen. You can watch me just go, you can turn off the sound and have me just be like that if you want to just watch me and try to read my lips, but so be warned, I'm not gonna I'm not going to not spoil this movie, which means I'm going to spoil it. Basically, it turns out that these two brother and sister are like, I think they're like orphans or something. Do you have to be orphaned to have a trust fund? I don't know. Anyway, these are a couple trust fund, spoiled brats. And basically, I can't remember why, but I think the brothers got more clout or something. I think he gets to deal with the money or gets more money, or maybe he's in charge of the money, whereas the sister is not too keen about that. Basically, the whole plot of this movie is the sister basically roofied this blonde girls who her brother wanted to get with drinks to basically, and then she wanted to videotape it, the bedroom, to basically frame the brother. So maybe if she framed the brother, who was from what I can understand, in control of the trust fund or the money, he had control of the money. Then if she framed him, maybe that would give, maybe they would release his power and put the power to the money would go over to her, or at least maybe more of the power or some of it would revert to her. I think that was her plan. I don't think we end up finding that out until the end of the movie. Basically, the whole movie is, the blonde girl's just roofied and she ends up falling off a balcony and lands on the table and just basically dead right there. And this movie turns out to be, unfortunately, at this point, basically a mix of I Know What You Did Last Summer and April Fool's Day from the mid-'80s. I was actually kind of digging it the first 20 minutes or so at this party, this big swanky rich party with all these beautiful people. I was hoping the scene was lasting a long time, like almost a third of the movie. I was hoping the whole movie was just going to take place that night at this one place, and I would have given this movie, more props, had it done that, than I'm going to end up giving it. But unfortunately, that doesn't happen. 20 or 25 minutes into the movie, after the girl falls off the balcony and dies, it like cuts to whatever trial or whatever, brief trial anyway. I'm just not going to, I don't know what the hell happens there. I'll spare you the details. But basically, cut to a year later, not long after, it's on March 31st, 2008. And just like I Know What You Did Last Summer, which is of course distributed by the same home video, whatever. Who knows, maybe it's the same producers. I don't know. I mean, as maybe some of the more later straight to video I Know What You Did Last Summer is. Regardless, it's the exact same thing. These people who were a part, the main leads or the main stars and players in this movie, all get a note that says, I can't even remember, I just saw it today, an hour ago. You think I'd know, but I mean, when a movie's not memorable, you tend not to remember it. It's just like, oh, I know the truth or something like that, show up at this cemetery on whatever day, I think it's April 1st, 2008, at noon or something. So all these people, just like with I Know What You Did Last Summer, the main players of this movie that were not necessarily involved, but involved with it, but privy to what happened with the girl falling, being roofied and got dizzy and flying off the balcony, they all show up at this, basically, I think her, cemetery or her gravesite or something like that. I can't even remember why they show up. I guess just I don't think no one meets them there. It's just this stupid thing where they all get together and decide on what to do next, or try to figure out who sent this or whatever. Anyway, I'm just going to cut to the chase here. The whole movie is basically this Nancy Drew whodunit, Hardy Boys bullshit that is completely and totally uninteresting. Like, for me, the most interesting part of this movie is the first 20 or 25 minutes that take place at this, Scout Taylor Compton's frickin' coming out party. Should be said that she's not, like the lead. I guess she's one of the leads, but I mean, not the lead. So if for you Scout Taylor Compton haters, which I know you guys are out there, she's not in it a whole hell of a lot. She's one of the featured players, but not one who comes around very often. But it's just after that 20-25 minute mark, the whole rest of the movie is completely and totally uninteresting to me. Where basically this main character, this brother and sister, these rich asshole kid, young 20s people are just driving around in her frickin', burgundy Mercedes hardtop convertible, driving around trying to figure out who's the person who's, sending this stuff. And it's like touted, this DVD is touted as unrated, so you think it might be gory, but no, it's actually a majority of the movie you could probably get away with showing on TV. There's some stuff that is like, I guess you probably couldn't show on TV, but it's just like, so if you want, like, basically, I don't think anyone even, like, dies, not that, the kills or anyone who dies in this movie is any really, of anything, of any interest. I don't think anyone really even dies until, like, maybe almost 50 minutes into the movie or something, and you've got people who die just by getting electrocuted standing in water, this kind of boring stuff. A guy drowning in a pool, one guy gets, basically hit by a van who you don't see. Of course, very much with like the original April Fool's Day, what ends up happening, this is what I warned you about, I'm going to spoil this movie, it's kind of no surprise that this movie would do the same thing as the original from the 80s, is that, basically all these people who die, and I guess that's kind of why you don't see these people die, because they're just like the first one or the original, they're not dying. But at the end of the day, the whole premise of this movie, I guess it's like, I mean, if you hadn't seen if you hadn't seen the original April Fool's Day from the mid '80s, maybe the way this movie ends would be more clever. Obviously, having seen that years and years ago and being a fan of the original April Fool's Day, the ending of this movie is just, not surprising, which is, I mean, it's a different twist on the original movie, I guess, but it's the same thing, of course, where all these people, the main players of the movie end up, slowly one by one dying throughout the course of the movie, and then at the end, this Scout Taylor Compton plays, basically the killer, and, basically has the brother and sister at gunpoint trying to get her to confess to roofing the blonde girl, who actually, I guess we're meant to understand, actually died. I think she's the only one who actually, someone does die for real in this movie, and I think she's the only one who does die. It's kind of like an accident, like I say, just like I Know What You Did Last Summer. So basically she fake shoots the brother right next to her, they're both sitting tied up right next to each other, and then, points the gun at her, and that gets this main, trust fund bitch in the red there with half a face going on to admit that, yes, it's me, or I roofied the drink of that blonde girl in hopes that, I could frame my brother, or get my brother in trouble so I could get, control of the money or whatever. And at that point, brother's, has been recently shot dead right next to her, puts his head up and is like, and then all the people who died, all the, main kind of the supporting cast, if you will, come into the shot, and they're coming into the room, and we're like, ha 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 ha. At first, this bitch who's tied up and just confessed to trying to frame the brother is like happy to see all these people are alive, and then she's like, I can't remember if she's disappointed that she confessed or whatever. I think she's more happy that all these people are actually alive or whatever, but and the brother's like, yeah, I figured you did this to try to frame me because I know I didn't roofie the drink. And I can't remember what the sister's reaction to being caught, and having confessed, only to have this be just a big charade to get her to confess, which, like I say, isn't a horrible idea. I mean, that's a good idea. Like, if you were to see the screenplay for this movie on paper, and you came to the end, that'd be, especially if you hadn't known anything about the first movie, that's kind of a cool ending. Problem is, I've seen the first movie, and just because you have maybe an ending that's kind of a cool twist on the original April Fool's Day movie doesn't mean that sitting through a completely and totally boring movie is anything of any kind of interest. Like, you have to do better than that, like sitting through 90 minutes. Of course, the first 20 weren't horrible in my opinion, but the rest of the movie was just completely and totally boring. So you gotta do better than that, like having a mostly boring movie with maybe a kind of a good ending, for me to give it any kind of decent stars. So as a kind of a hook that I kind of thought was goofy and kind of cool, maybe I can't, kind of undecided about the hook. Then Scout Taylor Compton's like, just giving away all the gimmicks. The Scout Taylor Compton character is like an actress, so she's been in a gory movie, I guess. So she's like, because the sister was tied up, was like, I seen you guys die, and she's Scout Taylor Compton's like, oh well, the makeup effects people from my movie helped with that. And what about the gun? Blank, see? And then she points it at her head and pulls the trigger and actually, blows her, not her head off, but shoots her through the head for real, and killing the sister accidentally accidentally, and everyone's in shock, and it's just like, so that's kind of a cool twist, I guess, to throw on the twist at the end, which happens not long after the whole gimmick of the movie is revealed, and the brother's like, oh my gosh, and they're like, did you rig the gun that way? And he's like, why would I do that? You could have easily shot me. And it's just like, it seems like, because as a viewer, you're like, okay, is this real, or did the sister rig her head to do that? What's going on here? And it seems genuine, and like the brother genuinely didn't want it to happen. And then at the end of the movie, everyone, or the Scout Taylor Compton character at the trial or whatever, is cleared of any wrongdoing or whatever for accidentally killing this girl. And basically the brother gets not only control, obviously, of the money as he had, but having his sister now out of the way, he probably gets even more money. So he's driving away after the trial at the end of the movie, and then we just see a shot of him driving, and he's kind of like smiles, and then it's the end of the movie. So basically he probably put that at a risk to basically his life. If I don't think Scout Taylor, I don't think anyone else in the movie would have been in on that. That would be really dangerous to do, like put a real bullet, because what if Scout, to put an extra real bullet after the blank, because what if Scout accidentally shot the sister instead of once with the one blank, twice, and it would have been a blank and a real bullet. Anyway, I think as a viewer we're supposed to assume that the brother put a blank in for the prank, and then, well, I mean, if she accidentally shot him twice, she would have shot the blank and the squib would have went off in him, and then shot him again and the real bullet would have went through him. I mean, it's not a good gimmick to do if you want to pull something. But I think that's what we're led to believe. The brother put one blank in and then one real bullet to actually, I don't know if he told Scout Taylor Compton character to do the blank at her head, which of course isn't safe to do anyway with the blank at point blank range, to shoot a blank at towards someone's head. But anyway, I think I'm going on and on way too much with this movie, even though I did kind of like a little bit of the first 20 minutes or so, and I thought maybe the twist at the end was an interesting way to do the same idea of an April Fool's Day movie, a different take on the original premise, which is having people die throughout the movie and then having them not be dead at the end, and the reason why. I thought maybe it was an interesting take, but just because the movie was majority of just almost unbearably boring, I'm going to only be able to give this movie 0 out of 4 stars for it. April Fool's Day 2008. If they just, to go the I Know What You Did Last Summer route meets April Fool's Day 1980, whatever, mid-80s, 85 or 86, was just kind of like if the whole movie had been at that one night on April 1st or whatever, and had things just going wrong or whatever, maybe it would have been better. But you think as much as I don't hate the first 20 minutes of it, my rating would be higher. Well, the reason it's not is just because the rest of the movie is just so boring, where they're just trying to figure things out, and it's not interesting one bit at all. So I think I've probably talked about this movie way too much. Here's the cover. This is a cover for you to avoid. I would highly not recommend this movie. More or less boring, unrated, but the gore isn't any better than it'd have to be for rated R or whatever. I don't think there's any breasts or nudity, female nudity in the movie, so that's also not a... Of course, that's pretty common now with horror movies or movies in general. So thank you very much for watching my review of April Fool's Day 2008, and as always, we'll catch you next time.